The night was calm, the kind where stars seemed to hang low over Earth, almost close enough to touch. In a small town nestled in the heart of America, life moved at its usual quiet pace. People were tucked into their homes, some watching television, others reading books or chatting with family. It was an ordinary evening just like any other. But that would soon change. Jack sat on the porch of his modest house, sipping coffee and listening to the crickets chirp. His wife, Laura, was inside putting their daughter, Emily, to bed. The air smelled fresh, carrying hints of grass and wildflowers from the fields nearby. Jack loved this place. After years of serving in the military, he had chosen this quiet life for himself and his family. He wanted nothing more than to grow crops, watch sunsets, and keep his loved ones safe. Little did he know how fragile that dream really was. Far away, in orbit around Earth, something stirred. A fleet of alien ships emerged silently from the void of space. They were massive, sleek, and brimming with power. To the people of Earth, these ships were unknown, but they belonged to the Galactic Empire, a vast interstellar civilization that viewed weaker species as obstacles to be removed. For centuries, humanity had been oblivious to their existence, too focused on its own struggles to notice the stars above. That ignorance ended tonight. Without warning, beams of light shot down from the sky. Cities across the globe erupted in flames as energy weapons tore through buildings and infrastructure. The attack was swift and merciless. Governments scrambled to respond, but their defenses were no match for the advanced technology of the invaders. Panic spread like wildfire as people realized they were under siege by forces far beyond their understanding. In Jack's town, the first sign of trouble came when the ground trembled. At first he thought it might be an earthquake, but then he heard it, a deep rumbling sound that shook the very air around him. Looking up, he saw streaks of red light cutting across the heavens. Moments later, explosions lit up the horizon. Buildings collapsed, fires roared to life, and screams filled the streets. "Laura!" Jack shouted, rushing inside. "We need to go now!" Laura appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching Emily tightly. Her face was pale with fear. "What's happening?" she cried. "No time to explain," Jack replied, grabbing a backpack and stuffing it with essentials. Water, food, blankets, and a flashlight. "Just trust me." Outside, chaos reigned. Neighbors ran in all directions, some trying to reach their cars, others simply fleeing on foot. The sky burned with unnatural colors as more beams rained destruction upon the town. Jack ushered his family toward the old pickup truck parked in the driveway. As they sped away, they passed scenes of devastation. Homes reduced to rubble, vehicles flipped upside down, and bodies lying motionless on the road. Behind them, the town hall exploded in a shower of sparks. Jack clenched the steering wheel, his jaw tight with determination. He didn't know where they were going, only that they had to get as far away from the aliens as possible. Meanwhile, in New York City, Sarah was working late in her lab. She was a scientist, one of the brightest minds of her generation, though few people outside her field knew her name. Her work focused on developing new technologies to improve life on Earth. Tonight, however, she wasn't thinking about breakthroughs or accolades. She was alone, buried in equations and data, trying to solve a problem that had haunted her for weeks. When the attack began, Sarah felt the building shake violently. Papers flew off her desk, and equipment toppled over. For a moment, she froze, unsure of what was happening. Then came the unmistakable sound of explosions echoing through the city. Rushing to the window, she saw flashes of light illuminating the skyline. Towering skyscrapers crumbled like sandcastles, and plumes of smoke billowed into the night. "This can't be real," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. But it was real, and it was terrifying. Sarah grabbed her laptop and stuffed it into a bag along with a few critical documents. As she fled the building, she noticed something strange. An abandoned military convoy parked nearby. The vehicles had been left behind, their doors wide open. Curiosity got the better of her, and she climbed inside one of the trucks. Inside, she found crates filled with experimental weapons and gadgets. Among them was a device labeled Shield Disruptor Prototype. Her heart raced. If this thing worked, it could give humanity a fighting chance against the invaders. But there was no time to test it here. Grabbing the prototype and a few other items, she made her way back onto the street, dodging debris and panicked crowds. As Sarah navigated the ruins of the city, she couldn't help but think about the bigger picture. Who were these aliens? Why? Had they attacked? And most importantly, how could humanity possibly hope to survive? Back in the countryside, Jack and his family found temporary shelter in an old barn. It wasn't much, but it offered protection from the elements and hopefully from the aliens. As they huddled together, listening to distant explosions, Emily clung to her mother, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Are we going to die, Daddy?" she asked softly. Jack knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No, sweetheart," he said firmly. "We're going to be okay. I promise." But even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at him. How could he protect his family against an enemy so powerful? What hope did any of them have? Hours turned into days as the full scale of the invasion became clear. Entire nations lay in ruins, their populations decimated. Communication networks were down, leaving survivors isolated and afraid. Yet amidst the despair, glimmers of resistance began to emerge. Small groups of people banded together, determined to fight back however they could. One such group found Jack and his family hiding in the barn. Their leader, a man named Daniel, introduced himself with a firm handshake. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a commanding presence that inspired confidence. Under his guidance, the group scavenged supplies, fortified their position, and prepared for whatever came next. For Jack, meeting Daniel marked the beginning of a new chapter. No longer was he just a farmer trying to protect his family. Now, he was part of something larger, a movement fueled by desperation but driven by hope. Together, they vowed to stand against the invaders no matter the odds. Unbeknownst to Jack, Sarah was also finding her place in this new world. After escaping New York, she encountered Alex, a pilot whose ship had been destroyed during the initial assault. Though wary of each other at first, they quickly realized they shared a common goal: survival. With Alex's knowledge of mechanics and Sarah's scientific expertise, they formed a formidable team. As the days passed, both Jack and Sarah found themselves drawn into the growing resistance effort. Each faced challenges that tested their courage, ingenuity, and resolve, but neither could have imagined the role they would play in shaping humanity's future, or the sacrifices that lay ahead. For now, the battle raged on. Cities burned, lives were lost, and the fate of Earth hung precariously in the balance. But even in the darkest moments, there was a spark of defiance, a refusal to surrender. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but it had not yet fallen. Not completely. The days following the invasion were a blur of fear, uncertainty, and loss. Survivors wandered through the wreckage of their once familiar world, searching for safety, food, or even just answers. The skies above Earth remained filled with alien ships, their sleek forms gliding silently as if mocking humanity's helplessness. But beneath the surface of despair, something unexpected began to take root: resistance. Jack had joined Daniel's group reluctantly at first. He wasn't a fighter by nature anymore. He had left that life behind when he traded his uniform for farming tools. Yet seeing the determination in Daniel's eyes and the resilience of the others around him stirred something deep within Jack. If they could stand up to the invaders, so could he. For Laura and Emily, he would do whatever it took. Daniel was a natural leader, someone who inspired trust without needing to demand it. His plan was simple but bold: gather weapons, disrupt the alien supply lines, and strike back wherever possible. It wasn't much, but it gave people hope, a precious commodity in those dark times. Under his guidance, the group scoured abandoned military bases, looted wrecked vehicles, and salvaged anything useful from the ruins of nearby towns. One morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Jack led a small team on a raid to an old armory located on the outskirts of what used to be a bustling city. The building was partially destroyed, its walls cracked and charred, but Daniel believed there might still be weapons inside. As they approached cautiously, Jack scanned the area for signs of movement. Alien patrols were unpredictable, and one wrong step could mean disaster. Inside the armory, they found crates of rifles, ammunition, and even a few heavy machine guns. It wasn't cutting-edge technology compared to what the invaders wielded, but it was better than nothing. While loading the supplies onto a truck, Jack noticed something tucked away in a corner, a dusty map showing key locations across the region. Among them were marked points labeled supply depots and communication hubs. His heart raced. If they could hit these targets, they might weaken the aliens' grip on the area. Daniel's going to want to see this, Jack muttered to himself, carefully folding the map and slipping it into his pocket. Meanwhile, Sarah and Alex traveled through the desolate landscape, trying to stay off the radar of both the aliens and hostile survivors. Their journey was fraught with danger, but they pressed on, driven by a shared sense of purpose. Sarah carried the shield disruptor prototype everywhere she went, convinced it held the key to turning the tide. But she knew it wouldn't work, unless they could test it, and that required getting close to the enemy. Alex drove their makeshift vehicle, a patched-up truck they'd salvaged from a junkyard. He glanced over at Sarah, who sat hunched over her laptop typing furiously. "You think this thing will actually work?" he asked, nodding toward the device strapped to the seat between them. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "But we have to try. If we can disable their shields even for a moment, it could give us an opening." Alex nodded, though skepticism lingered in his expression. "Let's just hope we live long enough to find out." Their travels eventually brought them to the remains of a military installation buried deep in the mountains. The facility had been abandoned after the initial attack, but Sarah suspected it might still contain valuable resources, or at least clues about how to fight back. As they explored the dimly lit corridors, they stumbled upon a control room filled with monitors and communication equipment. Most of it was damaged beyond repair, but one screen flickered weakly to life when Sarah touched a button. "What is that?" Alex asked, peering over her shoulder. "It's orbital defenses," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with excitement. "Some of Earth's satellites are still operational. If we can reactivate them, we might be able to target the alien fleet." The discovery reignited their spirits. For the first time since the invasion, they felt like they had a real chance, not just to survive, but to fight back. Working together, they spent hours repairing the system, bypassing fried circuits and rerouting power. Finally, they managed to bring one of the satellites online. On the monitor, they watched as the camera feed revealed a sweeping view of Earth from space and the alien ships hovering menacingly above it. "We need to tell someone about this," Alex said. "This isn't something two people can handle alone." Sarah agreed, though the thought of trusting strangers made her uneasy. Still, they couldn't afford to keep this breakthrough to themselves. They decided to head toward the nearest resistance, Stronghold, hoping to find allies willing to listen. As Sarah and Alex prepared to leave the facility, tensions were rising among Jack's group. Not everyone believed in Daniel's vision. Some argued that fighting was pointless, that humanity was doomed no matter what. A man named Carl, in particular, voiced his doubts loudly during a heated meeting. "We're throwing our lives away. For nothing," Carl shouted, slamming his fist on a table. "Look at what happened to New York, to Chicago, to every damn city out there. We can't win against them." Daniel stood calmly, letting Carl vent before responding. "I'm not asking anyone to sacrifice themselves blindly," he said, his tone firm but measured. "But sitting here waiting to die isn't living either. Every shot we fire, every blow we strike, it matters. It shows them we won't go quietly." Jack watched the exchange silently, his thoughts churning. He understood Carl's fear. He felt it too every time he looked at Emily's face. But he also believed in Daniel's resolve. When Carl stormed out of the meeting, muttering under his breath, Jack stayed behind to talk privately with Daniel. "You handled that well," Jack said, leaning against a wall. Daniel sighed, running, a hand through his hair. "It's hard to blame him. Fear makes people lash out, but we can't let it paralyze us, not if we want to protect what's left." Jack nodded. I'll keep an eye on him. Make sure he doesn't cause trouble. Thanks, Daniel said, clapping Jack on the shoulder. We'll need everyone pulling in the same direction if we're going to pull this off. Days later, Sarah and Alex arrived at the resistance camp where Jack and his group were based. At first, the newcomers were met with suspicion. Strangers weren't exactly welcomed with open arms in such uncertain times. But when Sarah explained what she and Alex had discovered, the shield disruptor, the orbital defenses, and the potential to strike back at the aliens, attitudes began to shift. Daniel listened intently, his sharp gaze never leaving Sarah as she spoke. If what you're saying is true, he said finally, then you've given us more than just hope. You've given us a strategy. Sarah hesitated, then added, but it's risky. Reactivating the satellites means exposing ourselves. And using the disruptor, we don't know how the aliens will respond. That's why we prepare, Daniel replied. We hit them hard and fast. No hesitation. The decision to unite forces wasn't made lightly. Jack voiced concerns about involving outsiders while Alex worried about putting all their eggs in one basket. But ultimately, everyone agreed that working together offered the best chance for success. Plans were drawn up, roles assigned, and preparations put into motion. For Jack, the alliance marked a turning point. No longer was he simply surviving. He was part of something greater, a collective effort to reclaim Earth. Laura noticed the change in him, the renewed sense of purpose that replaced the weariness in his eyes. Even Emily seemed to sense it, clinging to her father less and asking more questions about what they were doing. As the days passed, the group grew stronger. Weapons were distributed, defenses fortified, and strategies refined. Morale improved, bolstered by the knowledge that they weren't fighting alone anymore. Each person contributed in their own way, whether it was gathering supplies, standing guard, or caring for the wounded. Together, they formed a fragile but determined community, bound by a shared goal. Yet despite the progress, shadows of doubt lingered. Would their efforts be enough? Could humanity truly stand against an empire that spanned galaxies? These questions weighed heavily on everyone's minds, but they pushed them aside. There was no time for second-guessing, not when the stakes were so high. On a cold, clear night, Jack stood outside the camp, staring up at the stars. The sight of alien ships blotting out the constellations filled him with anger and sadness. This was his home, his planet, and he refused to let it be taken without a fight. Behind him, Laura approached, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. Thinking about tomorrow? She asked softly. He nodded. Yeah, about everything. She rested her head against his arm. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what matters. Jack smiled faintly, drawing strength from her words. Tomorrow would bring challenges, dangers, and sacrifices. But for now, surrounded by the people he loved and trusted, he allowed himself a moment of quiet hope. Humanity might have been battered and bruised, but it wasn't broken. Not yet. The resistance had grown stronger, but strength alone wasn't enough to win a war. They needed a plan, a bold, daring move that could shift the balance of power. Daniel gathered everyone in the camp for a meeting, his expression serious but determined. The group sat on logs and crates, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of a small fire. Jack noticed how quiet it was, the kind of silence that came before a storm. We've been hit hard, Daniel began, his voice steady. But we're still here, and now we have something we didn't have before, hope. Sarah and Alex brought us tools we can use to fight back, but using them won't be easy. Sarah stood up, holding the shield disruptor prototype in her hands. She looked nervous but resolute. This device, she said, holding it up for everyone to see, can disable the aliens' shields. If we can get close enough to their ships or bases, we can create an opening. But getting close is the problem, Alex added, standing beside her. Their patrols are everywhere. One wrong move, and we're finished. Jack leaned forward, his brow furrowed. So what's the plan? How do we use this thing without getting ourselves killed? Daniel unfolded the map Jack had found earlier. He spread it out on the ground, pointing to several key locations marked with red circles. These are supply depots and communication hubs, he explained. If we hit them, we can disrupt their operations, and if we time it right, we might be able to draw their attention away from one of their main bases long enough to strike. The room buzzed with murmurs as people considered the idea. It was risky, but it was also their best shot. Jack glanced at Laura, who sat quietly with Emily on her lap. He knew what he had to do. For his family, for everyone in the camp, he would take the risk. We'll split into teams, Daniel continued. One group will attack the supply depots to distract the aliens. Another will focus on reactivating the orbital defenses, and a third team led by Jack will deliver the shield disruptor to the alien base. Jack felt a lump form in his throat. Leading a mission like this was dangerous, but he didn't hesitate. "I'm in," he said firmly. Over the next few days, preparations intensified. Weapons were checked, vehicles repaired, and strategies rehearsed. Sarah worked tirelessly to fine-tune the disruptor, making sure it was ready for the mission. Alex spent hours teaching the team how to pilot the makeshift aircraft they'd salvaged, knowing that speed and precision would be crucial. Everyone had a role to play, no matter how small. As the day of the operation approached, tensions ran high. Carl, the man who had doubted them earlier, pulled Jack aside. "You really think this is going to work?" he asked, his tone skeptical but tinged with curiosity. "I don't know," Jack admitted. "But doing nothing isn't an option. Not anymore." Carl nodded slowly, then surprised Jack by offering his help. "If you're going down fighting, count me in." On the morning of the mission, the air was thick with anticipation. Jack hugged Laura tightly, promising her he'd come back. Emily clung to him, tears streaming down her face. "Be careful, Daddy," she whispered. "I will," he promised, kissing her forehead. Then, with a heavy heart, he joined the others. The first phase of the operation went smoothly, at least as smoothly as anything could go in a war against an overwhelming enemy. The distraction teams launched coordinated attacks on the supply depots, drawing large numbers of alien forces away from their main base. Explosions lit up the horizon as ammunition caches detonated, sending shockwaves through the area. Meanwhile, Sarah and Alex worked with a small team to reactivate the orbital defenses. Inside a hidden bunker, they monitored the satellite feeds, guiding the resistance fighters on the ground. When the cameras showed the alien fleet shifting positions, Sarah felt a surge of hope. "It's working," she breathed. "They're moving." At the same time, Jack's team raced toward the alien base. Their vehicle bounced over rough terrain, kicking up clouds of dust. The closer they got, the more intense the feeling of dread became. Alien ships loomed overhead, their sleek forms casting eerie shadows on the ground. Jack gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. When they reached the perimeter of the base, Jack signaled for everyone to stop. "From here we go on foot," he said. "Stay low and keep quiet." The team crept through the darkness, avoiding patrols and security drones. The base was massive, filled with towering structures and strange machinery. Jack's heart pounded as they made their way deeper inside, carrying the shield disruptor with them. Every step felt like walking into a trap, but they pressed on. Finally, they reached their target, a central tower that seemed to pulse with energy. According to Sarah's intel, this was the hub controlling the base's defenses. Jack motioned for the others to set up a perimeter while he and 2 volunteers carried the disruptor to the base of the tower. "Ready?" Jack asked, glancing at his companions. "As ready as I'll ever be," one of them replied, gripping his weapon tightly. Jack activated the disruptor, aiming it at the tower. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud hum, the device emitted a burst of energy that rippled outward. The tower shuddered, its lights flickering and dimming. Alarms blared throughout the base, and alien soldiers rushed toward them. "Move!" Jack shouted, grabbing the disruptor and retreating with his team. Laser blasts zipped past them, narrowly missing as they sprinted back to their vehicle. The aliens were fast, but Jack's team was faster. Just as they reached the edge of the base, the orbital defenses kicked in. From above, beams of light shot down from Earth's satellites targeting the alien ships. Several exploded in brilliant bursts of flame, lighting up the night sky. The sight was both terrifying and exhilarating, a reminder that humanity still had a chance. Back at the camp, cheers erupted as news of the success spread. Sarah watched the footage from the satellites, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." But amidst the celebration, Jack remained somber. The victory was significant, but it was only the beginning. The aliens weren't defeated, they were angry. Retaliation would come swiftly and brutally. As he looked around at the exhausted but hopeful faces of his comrades, he knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. That night, as the fires burned low and the stars peeked through the smoke-filled sky, Jack sat alone, thinking about what lay ahead. They had struck a blow against the invaders, but the war was far from over. Humanity had shown its resilience, but the cost of freedom was high, and the price had yet to be fully paid. Laura joined him, sitting quietly beside him. "You did good today," she said softly. Jack stared at the horizon, where faint flashes of light hinted at ongoing battles. "It's not over," he replied. "Not even close." She took his hand in hers, squeezing it gently. "We'll get through this. Together." Together. That single word carried so much weight. In a world torn apart by chaos and fear, it was the one thing that kept them going. No matter how dark things got, they had each other. And as long as they stood united, there was always hope. Next morning, the resistance regrouped, assessing their losses and planning their next move. Word of their success had spread, reaching other survivor groups scattered across the globe. Messages poured in from distant cities, offering support and pledging allegiance to the cause. Slowly, but surely, humanity was coming together, not just to survive, but to fight back. Among the newcomers was Rachel, a former diplomat who had survived the initial attack in Europe. She approached Daniel with a proposal: unite all resistance factions under a single command. "We're stronger together," she argued. "If we coordinate our efforts, we can take the fight to them." Daniel listened carefully, weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. It's time to bring everyone together." As alliances formed and strategies evolved, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. What had started as a small group of survivors hiding in a barn had grown into a movement capable of challenging an empire. Each person played a part, whether it was wielding a weapon, repairing equipment, or simply keeping spirits high. But the road ahead was fraught with challenges. The aliens were regrouping, launching counterattacks with renewed ferocity. Supplies were running low and fatigue was setting in. Yet despite the hardships, the resistance refused to give up. They had tasted victory, however fleeting, and it had reignited their determination. For Jack, the journey had changed him in ways he never expected. He had gone from a simple farmer trying to protect his family to a leader willing to risk everything for a better future. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but he bore it willingly, because in the end, it wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humanity was worth saving. As the sun rose over the battered landscape, casting long shadows across the ruins of Earth, Jack stood tall. The scars of war surrounded him, but so did the faces of those who refused to surrender. Together they faced the unknown, ready to fight for every inch of their home. Whatever came next, they would meet it head-on, with courage, unity, and unwavering resolve. The resistance had struck a significant blow against the Galactic Empire, but the victory was fleeting. The aliens responded with brutal force, launching relentless counterattacks across Earth. Cities that had survived the initial invasion were now reduced to ash and the skies filled with more ships than ever before. For Jack, Sarah, Alex, and the others, the message was clear. Humanity's defiance had only made the invaders angrier. Despite the escalating attacks, morale among the resistance remained high. Word of their success at the alien base had spread, like wildfire, inspiring survivors around the world to join the fight. Refugee camps became hubs of activity as people organized themselves into new units, each contributing whatever they could: weapons, food, medical supplies, or raw determination. Under Rachel's guidance, these scattered groups began coordinating their efforts, sharing intelligence and resources to maximize their impact. Daniel took charge of the growing movement, his leadership style earning respect from all corners. He worked tirelessly to unify the factions, often traveling between camps to meet with leaders and strategize. His vision was simple but powerful. Humanity would not be divided again. "We are one," he declared during a meeting of regional commanders. "And together, we will stand." Jack found himself thrust into a leadership role as well. His bravery during the mission to the alien base had earned him recognition, and many looked to him for guidance. At first, he struggled with the responsibility, unsure if he was cut out for it, but Laura reminded him of what mattered most. "You're doing this for Emily," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "For her future. That's all you need to remember." With renewed focus, Jack embraced his role, helping Daniel plan the next phase of the Resistance's campaign. They knew the shield disruptor had proven effective, but using it again would require even greater precision and risk. Sarah and Alex continued refining the device, testing its limits and exploring ways to improve its range and power. Each breakthrough brought them closer to leveling the playing field against the invaders. One evening, as Sarah pored over data, in the makeshift lab, Alex approached her, concern etched on his face. "What happens if we fail?" he asked quietly. "If we can't stop them?" Sarah paused, setting down her tools. She had asked herself the same question countless times. "Then we make sure they pay a price they'll never forget," she replied firmly. "Even if it costs us everything." Alex nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." The stakes grew higher when reconnaissance teams reported disturbing news. The aliens were preparing a massive assault designed to wipe out all remaining human resistance. Intelligence suggested they planned to deploy biological weapons capable of devastating entire populations. Time was running out and the resistance needed to act fast. Rachel proposed a daring plan: a full-scale assault on the Empire's orbital station, which served as their command hub. It was a risky move, but it offered the best chance to cripple their operations and buy humanity time to regroup. "If we can take out their central control," she explained during a strategy session, "we can disrupt their communications and weaken their forces on the ground." The idea sparked debate among the resistance leaders. Some argued it was too dangerous, while others saw it as their only option. Jack listened intently, weighing the pros and cons. Finally, he spoke up. "It's risky, yes, but staying here and waiting for them to crush us is no better. If we don't try, we've already lost." His words resonated with the group, and after much discussion, they agreed to proceed. Preparations began immediately, with everyone pitching in to ready the fleet of repurposed ships and stolen alien technology they had gathered. Sarah and Alex worked around the clock to adapt the shield disruptor for use in space, knowing it would be critical to breaching the orbital station's defenses. Meanwhile, Jack trained pilots and soldiers, drilling them on tactics and contingency plans. As the launch date approached, tensions ran high. Families said tearful goodbyes, unsure if they would see their loved ones again. Emily clung to Jack, begging him not to go. "Please stay," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose you." Jack knelt beside her, cupping her face in his hands. "I have to do this, sweetheart," he said gently. "But I promise I'll come back to you, no matter what." Laura hugged him tightly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Come back to us," she whispered. "That's all I ask." On the day of the assault, the resistance fleet assembled in a remote desert location. Dozens of ships ranging from battered cargo haulers to sleek alien fighters lined up side by side, their crews eager yet apprehensive. Jack stood at the forefront, addressing the assembled fighters through a hastily rigged communication system. "Today, we show the galaxy who we are, he said, his voice steady and strong. "We are humans, we are survivors, and we will not be erased. Whatever happens out there, remember why we're fighting. For our families, for our planet, for our future. Let's make them regret ever coming here." Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing across the barren landscape. As engines roared to life, the fleet launched into the sky, heading toward the orbital station. From below, those left behind watched, anxiously praying for their success. The journey to the station was fraught with danger. Alien patrols intercepted the fleet multiple times, forcing them to engage in dogfights amidst the stars. Jack led his squadron with skill and determination, weaving through enemy fire and taking down ships with pinpoint accuracy. Beside him, Alex piloted a cloaked vessel carrying the shield disruptor, dodging attacks as he navigated toward the station's main shield generator. Inside the orbital station, chaos reigned as alarms blared and lights flashed. The aliens scrambled to respond to the sudden assault, deploying reinforcements and activating defensive systems. Sarah monitored the situation from a distance, guiding Alex and the others via encrypted transmissions. "You're almost there," she urged. "Just a little farther." Finally, Alex reached the target. With Sarah's instructions, he positioned the ship directly above the shield generator and activated the disruptor. A surge of energy pulsed outward, disabling the station's protective barrier. The moment it fell, the rest of the fleet moved, unleashing a barrage of missiles and laser fire. Jack's squadron led the charge, targeting key structures within the station. Explosions rocked the facility as corridors collapsed and systems failed. Amidst the chaos, Jack spotted a high-ranking alien commander directing the defense effort. Determined to eliminate the threat, he broke formation and pursued the enemy leader. Their duel was intense, a deadly dance of speed and precision. The alien ship fired relentlessly, narrowly missing Jack's craft as he evaded its attacks. Gritting his teeth, Jack locked onto the target and fired a missile, scoring a ISA direct hit. The alien vessel exploded in a burst of light, sending debris spiraling into space. Back aboard the cloaked ship, Alex and his team worked to transmit the virus Sarah had developed, designed to infiltrate and corrupt the station's network. Emily, inspired by her father's bravery, volunteered to assist despite the danger. Her small hands trembled as she entered commands into the console, her young voice steady as she relayed updates to Sarah. "It's working," Emily exclaimed, her face lighting up with pride. "The virus is spreading." The transmission succeeded, crippling the station's systems and plunging it into darkness. Without centralized control, the alien fleet began to falter, their coordination breaking down. Seizing the opportunity, the resistance pressed their advantage, destroying key components of the station and forcing the invaders to retreat. By the time the battle ended, the orbital station was in ruins, its once imposing structure reduced to floating wreckage. Exhausted but triumphant, the surviving members of the resistance fleet returned to Earth, greeted as heroes by those who had waited anxiously for their return. Jack landed his ship and stepped out, searching for familiar faces in the crowd. When he spotted Laura and Emily, he ran to them, pulling them into a tight embrace. Tears streamed down their faces as they held each other, grateful to be reunited. Though the victory was significant, the cost had been steep. Many lives had been lost, and the scars of war would remain for generations. Yet amidst the grief, there was hope, a fragile but undeniable sense that humanity might just have a chance. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, Jack stood with his family, watching the stars emerge one by one. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that the future could still hold something worth fighting for. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but together they would face whatever came next, with courage, resilience, and an unyielding spirit. The victory at the orbital station marked a turning point in humanity's fight against the Galactic Empire. For the first time since the invasion, people dared to believe that survival was possible, and not just survival, but triumph. The resistance had proven that Earth's defenders could strike back effectively, even against an enemy far more advanced. Yet, as celebrations erupted in makeshift camps and hidden shelters, sobering realities set in. The war was far from over. With the alien command hub destroyed, their forces were disorganized, but they were not defeated. Ships still patrolled Earth's skies, and ground troops continued to occupy key regions. Survivors emerged from hiding, eager to join the resistance, but supplies were dwindling. Food, medicine, and fuel were in short supply, and the strain of maintaining such a widespread effort began to show. Jack, Sarah, Alex, and the others knew they couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. Every moment of hesitation gave the aliens time to regroup. Daniel took charge of rebuilding efforts, ensuring that survivors across the planet had access to basic necessities. Under his leadership, teams worked tirelessly to restore power grids, repair water systems, and distribute food to those in need. He understood that keeping morale high required more than just military victories. It meant giving people hope for a better future. "We're not just fighting to survive," he told Jack one evening, as they surveyed a newly established refugee camp. "We're fighting to live." Jack nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He thought about Emily, who had played such a vital role in the orbital mission, and Laura, whose quiet strength kept him grounded. They were his reason for fighting, his anchor in a world gone mad. But he also felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier with each passing day. The resistance looked to him for guidance, trusting him to lead them through the chaos. It was a burden he carried willingly, but it wasn't easy. Meanwhile, Sarah and Alex focused on adapting the virus used to cripple the orbital station into a weapon capable of targeting the Empire's homeworld. Their work was painstaking and often frustrating, but they refused to give up. In a lab cobbled together from salvaged equipment, they tested new iterations of the virus, running simulations to predict its effects on alien technology. Sarah spent hours poring over data, her mind racing with possibilities. If they could deploy the virus strategically, it might cripple the Empire's infrastructure across multiple star systems. "We're close," she told Alex one night as they reviewed the latest results, "but we need to be sure. One mistake and they'll adapt faster than we can counter." Alex leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I know," he said, "but how do we test something like this without risking everything?" Sarah hesitated, then replied, "We don't. Not completely. All we can do is trust our calculations, and each other." As weeks turned into months, the Resistance launched coordinated attacks on alien outposts, reclaiming territory piece by piece. Each victory, no matter how small, bolstered spirits and strengthened their resolve. Jack led several missions, his tactical skills earning him respect among the fighters. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing a dangerous game of chess, trading blows while waiting for the next big move. One day, during a raid on an alien supply depot, Jack encountered Carl, the man who had once doubted the Resistance's chances. Carl had become a valuable ally, proving himself in battle after battle. As they regrouped following the successful operation, Carl approached Jack with a rare smile. "You were right," he said simply, "about never giving up." Jack clapped him on the shoulder. "None of us could have done it alone. That's what makes us strong." Back at the main camp, Rachel worked to expand the Resistance network, reaching out to neighboring star systems oppressed by the Galactic Empire. Through intercepted communications and covert diplomacy, she discovered whispers of rebellion spreading beyond Earth. Planets subjugated by the Empire for centuries saw humanity's defiance as a spark of inspiration. Rebel factions began reaching out, offering support and pledging allegiance to the cause. "This changes everything," Rachel told Daniel when she shared the news. "If we can unite these groups, we won't just be fighting for Earth, we'll be fighting for freedom across the galaxy." Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's risky. We don't know if we can trust them." "We don't have to trust them blindly," Rachel countered. "But we can't win this war alone. Not anymore." The decision to form alliances with extraterrestrial rebels was controversial, but ultimately unanimous. Humanity needed allies if it hoped to stand against the Empire's vast resources. Envoys were sent to meet with leaders of these factions, forging bonds based on mutual suffering and shared goals. For the first time, Jack realized that Earth's struggle was part of something much larger, a cosmic battle between tyranny and liberty. Amidst the preparations, Laura and Emily found ways to contribute to the cause. Laura organized educational programs for children in the camps, teaching them basic skills and instilling values of resilience and compassion. Emily, inspired by her parents' bravery, helped care for younger kids, telling stories of heroes who fought for a better tomorrow. Her optimism became a beacon of light in dark times, reminding everyone why they were fighting. Sarah and Alex finally completed their work on the virus, developing a version capable of targeting the Empire's core systems. The challenge now was delivering it to the homeworld. After intense debate, the Resistance decided to send a small team aboard a cloaked ship piloted by Alex. Jack volunteered to accompany them, knowing the mission's importance and its risks. "You don't have to do this," Laura pleaded the night before departure. "You've already done so much." "I'm doing this because I've already done so much," Jack replied gently. "Because every step we take brings us closer to ending this war. I'll come back to you. I promise." The mission launched under cover of darkness, the cloaked ship slipping past alien patrols undetected. Inside, tension hung thick in the air as the team monitored their progress. Sarah stayed in constant contact, guiding them through potential hazards and adjusting the virus's parameters remotely. Emily's voice crackled over the comms, wishing them luck. "Make them pay," she said, her tone fierce despite her age. When they reached the Empire's homeworld, Alex navigated the ship to a secure location where they could deploy the virus. Jack and another operative disembarked, planting devices designed to transmit the program directly into the planet's networks. The process was nerve-wracking, every second stretching into eternity as they avoided detection. Finally, the transmission succeeded. The virus spread rapidly, disrupting communications, disabling weapons, and sowing confusion among the Empire's ranks. Back on Earth, Sarah watched the results unfold in real time, a mixture of relief and pride washing over her. "It's working," she whispered. "It's actually working." News of the sabotage reached rebel factions across the galaxy, igniting flames of rebellion wherever the Empire held sway. Planets rose up, overthrowing their oppressors and declaring independence. The tide of the war shifted dramatically, with humanity standing at the forefront of a galactic uprising. As reports poured in, Jack and the team returned to Earth, greeted as heroes. Exhausted but elated, they joined the celebrations erupting in camps worldwide. For the first time in years, laughter replaced fear and hope replaced despair. People danced in the streets, sang songs of defiance, and dreamed of a brighter future. Yet amidst the jubilation, Jack remained reflective. He stood apart from the festivities, gazing at the stars. Laura joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "The road ahead," he replied. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. There's still so much to rebuild, so many wounds to heal." She rested her head against his shoulder. "We'll get there. Together. Together." That word carried more meaning than ever before. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, yet it had risen stronger, united not just by blood or borders, but by a shared vision of freedom. As Jack looked around at the faces of those he loved and those he had fought alongside, he allowed himself a moment of quiet gratitude. The war was far from over, and challenges lay ahead. But for now, they had won a battle, not just against the invaders, but against despair itself. And in that victory, they found the strength to keep moving forward one step at a time. The galaxy was in turmoil. The sabotage of the Galactic Empire's core systems had sent shockwaves through its dominion, destabilizing planets and sparking rebellions across countless star systems. Humanity's defiance had ignited a firestorm of resistance, proving to oppress civilizations that even the mightiest empire could be challenged. For Jack, Sarah, Alex, and the rest of Earth's defenders, this was both a victory and a call to action. The fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. Back on Earth, the Resistance worked tirelessly to consolidate their gains. Alien patrols still roamed parts of the planet, but they were fewer and less coordinated than before. Survivors emerged, from hiding, reclaiming cities, and rebuilding communities. Under Daniel's leadership, efforts shifted from pure survival to long-term recovery. Schools reopened in makeshift classrooms, farms sprang back to life, and factories hummed with activity as people produced tools, weapons, and supplies needed for the ongoing war effort. Jack threw himself into helping rebuild his hometown, now a symbol of resilience. He led teams clearing debris, repairing roads, and constructing shelters. Laura joined him, organizing food drives and medical clinics. Emily tagged along wherever she could, her bright smile lifting spirits wherever she went. "We're making it better," she told her father one evening as they watched the sunset. "Right?" "We are," Jack replied, ruffling her hair. "But there's still work to do." Sarah and Alex continued refining their technology, adapting the virus to target new threats. Their lab became a hub of innovation, attracting brilliant minds from around the world. Together they developed weapons and defenses capable of standing up to the Empire's remaining forces. But Sarah knew their success depended not just on technology, but on unity. "We've shown we can fight," she said during a meeting with Daniel and Rachel. "Now we need to show we can lead." Rachel agreed, emphasizing the importance of building alliances with rebel factions across the galaxy. Diplomatic envoys traveled to liberated planets offering support and coordinating joint operations. These alliances grew stronger as shared victories proved humanity's worthiness as partners. Jack marveled at how far they'd come, from scattered survivors hiding in fear to leaders of a galactic coalition fighting for freedom. The final phase of the war required a bold move, a massive counteroffensive aimed at driving the Empire completely out of Earth's orbit. The plan was ambitious: launch a coordinated assault on the remaining alien fleet, using repurposed ships and newly designed fighters armed with Earth's enhanced technology. Sarah's virus would play a key role, disabling enemy systems mid-battle and giving humanity the upper hand. Preparations took months, with every available resource poured into the effort. Pilots trained relentlessly, engineers fine-tuned engines, and strategists mapped out every detail. Jack volunteered to lead the IDNO mission, knowing the risks but unwilling to let anyone else bear the burden alone. "If we don't finish this now," he told Daniel, "they'll keep coming back." On the eve of the attack, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Families gathered for quiet meals, soldiers checked their gear one last time, and children whispered prayers for those heading into battle. Laura held Jack close, tears streaming down her face. "Promise me you'll come home," she begged. "I promise," he said softly, kissing her forehead. "For you and Emily, always." As dawn broke, the fleet assembled over the ocean, a patchwork armada representing humanity's determination. Ships ranged from patched-up cargo haulers to sleek alien vessels captured during earlier battles. At the helm of the flagship stood Jack, his voice steady as he addressed the crew. "Today we take back our skies," he declared. "Today we show the galaxy what happens when you mess with Earth." The battle began with a deafening roar as hundreds of ships surged toward the alien fleet. Lasers streaked across the void. Explosions lit up the darkness and fighters danced through the chaos. Jack led his squadron with precision, weaving through enemy fire and taking down ship after ship. Beside him, Alex piloted a cloaked vessel carrying the latest version of Sarah's virus, dodging attacks as he navigated toward the heart of the enemy formation. Inside the alien command ship, panic spread as systems began failing. Sarah monitored the situation remotely, guiding Alex and the others through encrypted transmissions. "Deploy the virus now," she urged, her voice tight with anticipation. Alex complied, releasing the program into the enemy network. Within moments, the alien fleet faltered, their advanced technology rendered useless by humanity's ingenuity. Seizing the advantage, the resistance pressed forward, destroying key targets and forcing the invaders to retreat. As the last alien ship vanished into the void, cheers erupted across the fleet. Exhausted but triumphant, the survivors returned to Earth, greeted as heroes by those who had waited anxiously for their return. In the aftermath, Earth began to heal, cities rose from the ashes, fields bloomed anew, and families reunited after years apart. Daniel focused on rebuilding governments and restoring order, ensuring that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Sarah dedicated herself to advancing science, dreaming of exploring the stars rather than fearing them. Alex became a celebrated pilot, leading missions to distant planets to forge alliances and share Earth's story of triumph. Jack settled into a quieter life, content to watch Emily grow up in a world free from fear. Yet he remained vigilant, knowing the cost of complacency. On quiet evenings, he sat on the porch with Laura, watching the stars twinkle above. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" she asked one night. "Maybe," Jack replied. "But if they do, we'll be ready." Years passed, and humanity's influence expanded beyond Earth. Stories of their defiance spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring others to rise against oppression. The Galactic Empire, weakened and fractured, struggled to maintain control over its territories. For the first time in centuries, the cosmos seemed full of possibility. As Jack reflected on all they had endured, he felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, yet it had risen stronger. United not by blood or borders, but by a shared vision of freedom, they had proven that courage and resilience could overcome even the greatest odds. The war had changed everyone, leaving scars both visible and hidden. But it had also revealed something extraordinary: the indomitable spirit of humanity. As Jack looked at his family, his friends, and the future stretching before them, he allowed himself a moment of quiet gratitude. They had won, not just against the invaders, but against despair itself. And as the sun set over a world reborn, Jack knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them together, with hope, determination, and an unyielding belief in the power of unity.